Before I go any further, can we acknowledge, please, the people who served us our meal this evening and the role they played? It was very good, thank you. Now, I was happy running nightclubs when I went out one night to feed the poor. And I discovered Charity in America, which is based on the redemption of the giver, not the liberation of the receiver. And it's a glorious part of who we are, but it's flawed. And I became very interested in how could we flip the dynamic so that in fact everybody rose up, everybody benefited. So I proposed an idea that became the DC Central Kitchen, and it was basically a FedEx for food. FedEx was a brand new business model, and this bizarre notion that for 10 bucks, Fred Smith said I can get a letter from San Diego to San Francisco via Memphis, Tennessee. Memphis was the hub. So I just proposed, let's create a food hub where restaurants, hotels, hospitals, caterers, the industry I grew up in, could donate food. Food that was, and all they had to do was basically provide a safe alternative to throwing it away. And this was great business for restaurant. I mean, and by the way, anybody in the restaurant business? Anybody waited on tables in their life? There you go, okay. You know, nobody's laughing maniacally at 2 in the morning and throwing food away. You know, restaurant people love food, and it pains them to throw it away, but they don't want to be sued. So all you need to do is provide some kind of a health approved, some kind of an alternative. And interestingly enough, there was, and there remains this bizarre urban myth that it's against the law to get food from restaurants, hotels, hospitals, prepared food. Health department won't let you. There's never, ever, ever been a law, ever, anywhere. And in fact, just the opposite. Not only were there states that all states have laws that actually promoted it, but in 1996, I was lucky enough to go and be part of the passage of the Bill Emerson Food Donor Act, which created the first national law that said unless it's a case of gross negligence or malicious intent, no donor of food will be held liable if they give to a certified charity. Now, I basically proposed this idea, and I'll be honest with you, this is one of the reasons I continue to do what I do and talk all the time. It's because, not unlike many of you who have new ideas, I came and proposed to a group of charities where I had volunteered one night to serve the poor in Washington, D.C., who were lined up in the rain in front of the State Department waiting for this truck to show up as it did every night. And I just came up, and again, where's the food come from? An expensive grocery store, we throw away food. So that idea of the food hub, but what really struck me was the long line of people outside in the rain. And the people I met who, even though I was burdened by a stereotype of who they were and what they would be like anybody who's gone out to work with the poor, the disenfranchised, very quickly your fears are mitigated by the reality of people are people are people. And I kept looking at the people I met and didn't want to judge, but still felt that the majority of people I met had the earmarks of people who could work in the hospitality industry. So I proposed the idea that if you had a central kitchen, you could feed more people better food for less money. If you could bring the restaurants, the hotels, all that food to a central place and process it. But more importantly, if you brought people in off the street and removed the artificial divide of a table where somebody with a job served the poor and created more of a community response. It says, we are Washingtonians and let us work together side by side. So whether you are the President of the United States, whether you're a young student needing service hours, whether you're someone home from prison, whether you're a former addict, I don't care, we're Washingtonians. And side by side, we can approach hunger from a very different position as neighbors, as shared citizens. Now that was my approach. Now it's fascinating, and particularly those of you who work in the restaurant industry will appreciate this. I was shocked by how many people were convinced it would not work. To the point of, and I was ready for a lot of the arguments that you can anticipate, you know, it's against the law, blah, 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 but I was shocked how many people insinuated that I was naive to think that the homeless could work in restaurants. And it was like, oh, dude, you've never worked in a restaurant. I mean, you can't be too messed up to get a job in a restaurant. I'm serious. I mean, unless you're actively smoking crack while you're stirring a pot, you can get a job in a restaurant. But again, this is because people were projecting. They were basing their ideas on anecdotal understanding. So whether it's food service, people's potential, blah, blah, blah. Oftentimes what I've discovered and what I do is I just try and guide people to a place they're afraid to go. You know, historically, what I've discovered over the years that most people in America are really decent, kind people. They're just afraid of change. They'd rather think if you're poor, it's your fault. If you are in prison, you did something to deserve it. If you are hungry, get a job. And it's easy to hold on. People want to hold on very tight to that stereotype because that relieves them of any responsibility. You know, and that's a very safe, comfortable spot. And people go to safe, comfortable spots, and they do not want that interfered with. And this is what we're talking about. How do you help people let go of that fear?